So this poem I wrote May 8th, 2016, which was a way while back. It's called Mexican Heart. My second heart only beats in Mexican. It is ravaged. It is howling at the highest mountain but never hearing its echo. Es hablar español y que no te entiendan. Es saber que tienes otra lengua aparte del español escondida que habla otro idioma más allá que lo indígena y no lo sabes. The second Mexican heart beats close to the ribcage. It hangs on so that it will not fall into oblivion. It beats fast like running back to a pueblo that has no casita with my family's last name on it. It pulses like wanting to hear stories from my abuelita y abuelo that I will never experience, only write. My second heart suffers from a syndrome called an aunt asked for separation. It was pulled from the hands of my country that nourished this earth child. Mud made on grassy hill on the way to Anahuac, hardened in my mother's warrior womb, then wrapped in newspaper and shipped across the border. In this side of the border, I wear the honey-rich desert on my skin. It is how I travel to and from my birth country and here. The wind is my escape. My clay-brown eyes are handmade artesanía. It is the only wealth passed on to me from a lineage of adopted great-grandparents. My nopal tongue blooms a broken Spanish like purple and pink cactus flowers on both sides of the border. Indiscriminately, if customs at the Mexican-American border had the sensitivity for nature magic, my grandma's brujeria, they could trace the umbilical cord between the beating sun-bathed Chihuahuan heart and mine in Inglewood. There is a longing, always a desire to dig to the bone of me, the bone of my birthplace, and compare the structures. Are we the same? But then here I am, far too settled, in my too expensive little apartment in Inglewood, my comfortability to eating out instead of picking up a damn sartén because it's too hot, because it's easy, to ignore the beating pulse of my ancestors calling my name, reminding me of a mission, to be dismantled to my human core and shake the world, like the two Mexican lovers that turned into volcanoes at the highest mountaintop. Indigenous name goes here. My second heart beats in Mexican. And it will never die, just like the people that have survived rape and erasure, Americanization and mestizaje, and all the indigenous folks still alive, dancing to keep the sanity of this forsaken world. But on this side of the border, with the LAX airport and descending airplanes and loud hip-hop and Shakira, I can't hear my Mexican heart sometimes. I can't hear it. So this poem is called Chihuahuan Sunset, and it was written May 10th, 2016. I walk up a railless flight of stairs to the cement flat rooftop of his house. My dad follows. That one is going to be your room. He points to bricks lined up for the base of a wall. I look out across the poorest part of Chihuahua, ignoring him. I knew that I missed this, even though I never had this. Maybe it was through his blood that I missed it. In me, I recognized home. The dirt smell in the air, coronas, dancing around, carne asada, música, laughs in Spanish, that freedom, humility, warmth of home heated by fire. On the horizon, I imagine my father mount his coffee bean brown horse and riding to the sunset, holding his cowboy hat down so the wind won't claim it theirs. He leaves and fends for himself in the wild for days, coming back only when peace was settled. That one right there will be your sister's room. Over there, your brother's. And I think I'll put the bathroom here. I let the wind of time hit me. Hard. I stand, hands in my jean jacket, trying to help him build his home, praying. But the wind foretold his roof would never become a second floor to become his two-story house. It whispered his horses would be sold. It would be the only revenue he has coming in for groceries. He is 55, and being the latest shift bus driver to and from maquiladoras isn't easy. The wind told me none of his children would live with him. The night breeze told me his wife turned his back to him under full moons. I look back at him, close my faucets so tears won't spill, and smile so hard my eyes close, and I let my light remind him that I have forgiven you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to First Favorite. I'm here, my name is Dre, and we're here with our special guest, Fei Hernandez. What is up? Thank you for coming.
Nothing much.
Yeah, so tell me about your first piece. Like, how long ago was it, and what was kind of going through your brain writing that? You know, the time of your life writing that. Like, what informed that piece?
So it was about like 3 or 4 years ago while I was still in college, and during that time I was having this like major identity crisis where I started reflecting on my undocumentedness, and then what does it mean to be Mexican? What does it mean to be Mexican in the U.S. and outside of Mexico, being light-skinned, the complexities of like culture and language, and mitigating all these worlds. And so that first piece, Mexican Heart, right, talk about like how it has a very particular sound, my heart beat, but I don't always get to hear it because I'm so distracted by my Inglewood life and you know, my upbringing here in the world that I've built here. So
I feel like a lot of people who have immigrated to the States have that idea of they have this feeling in mind, but they might not necessarily understand it because it's in a different language, or you know, it's not as familiar to them as other people's home, right? I'm from the Philippines, you know, and it's crazy how you think, you know, and you rep like, oh, this is where I'm from, but until you actually go there and live the life, it's so different from here, right? Because you're stuck literally in the middle where you might not be enough for over there, but you're definitely not enough over here, right? So that's pretty interesting. What about your favorite piece? Why is that your favorite piece? Because it's from 3 years ago. Yeah.
I mean, I've already adapted this piece, but it's the only piece I have that's directly to my father. It was a very difficult piece to write and to express because I am being forgiving. I'm being forgiving, right? Like everything that happened and my other poems inform this narrative, but you know, I'm reflecting on my relationship with my father, a moment we had when I visited him in Mexico. You know, going up his flight of stairs to the rooftop, and like him telling me about the world he's gonna build on the second floor, and me just knowing the second floor is not gonna happen. It's a bunch of like empty promises, kind of like what he did with my mom and me. But then also being able to look at him and see the person, the human in him, and being like, you know what, like it's all good. Like I forgive you.
Right. And in terms of that, I get it, your favorite piece is directly towards your father, and it does show forgiveness, because when we kind of talk about that situation in a lot of other people's lives, it's filled with animosity, right? Where it's like, oh, you fucking weren't there, you're like, right? So it's really cool to see the flip side of like, I understand you're human and you have good intentions, but also execution might be shit. You know what I mean? In terms of writing style, how do you think it differs from like, because eventually growth is there, but in terms of like stylistic issues or content issues, like how are you grown? I know.
No, I feel like I have grown. Like I think the similarities in my work from then and now is still that I have a strong hold on imagery. I think I'm able to really paint a picture. I think that with the new edited version of this piece, it's more grounded, it's on page, and it works stylistically. Enjambment and all these technical like literary things are working well. In the piece that I just read right now, it was still kind of rough. Like the formatting was all over the place, and I think it wasn't as clear or as specific as it could be or as it is now. But I have grown so much as a writer.
Right.
But there's still my essence in it, which is what I appreciate.
When you wrote your first piece, did you think this was like, oh, this is the fierest shit?
Yeah.
Because like, you know, we're all there, right? We're where we're at,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to picture where you're gonna be way in the future, or like even back then. You can look back then, but I remember doing like a show, and it's just like, yo, I fucking killed it, and it was like my first show. And then I watched video playback, and I'm like, yo, what are you doing, dude? Like, what are you wearing, first of all? But does that apply to your favorite piece? Because it was long ago. It was 2016, right? So do you still have those kind of emotions with it, or are you very, this is it, I'm satisfied where this is at, in terms of, I'm not gonna, it's, dare I say, perfect the way it is at that point?
No. I always think that editing is a huge process. Continue editing and adapting. Yeah. The reason why I wrote the 2016 version was because I wanted to, showcase kind of like where it was at its beginning stages. But for me, editing is important. The adaptation of the work is important. I feel like it has grown for sure.
So what's the line of editing? Because I know I talked to a bunch of artists, and they're like, oh, I'm always editing, a piece is never done, and I'm like, yo, some of my pieces are just kind of done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And where's that point for you?
With this piece particularly? In general? In
general, and with this piece?
This piece was definitely not ready right now.
Right.
But now that I have worked through it, now it's for sure ready to be submitted to some like literary magazine or whatever, and you just know. But then I also like have the dilemma between like the poem written on paper and then what poems I'm gonna perform. Like the first piece I read, Mexican Heart. When I wrote that, I was like, oh, this is super legit. This is fire, whatever. But then it's kind of like verbose. 1, 2. It's kind of like meta. Like there's just a lot of imagery, and I feel like people get lost. So that piece can be edited to be a good,
and like more easily digestible.
Yeah, it's like
for the lay audience.
Yeah, and if it's written down, it'll be easier to be like digested. Whereas if I take that and perform it, it all depends on how you perform it. But I feel like people might like not be connected.
That's interesting.
Because
I've never had that conversation of like, imagery is more digestible when it's read, because they're creating it and it gives them time to
process.
Yeah, and they can look back because it's there. But performance-wise,
it's instant.
You kind of have to spoon feed it.
Yeah, and I do that with a lot of my work, where it's not that I don't trust my audience, but I want to make sure that my audience takes away what I want them to take away, and I don't want anything to be lost in translation in regards to like performance and audience recipe.
That's very like magic in a way, I think, where like some things are just so abstract that like you seriously have to spoon feed. Like, oh, that card that was in your hand is now changed into, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I gotta rethink my whole shit. No, I don't.
Okay.
No, we'll figure it out. But yo, thank you so much for coming out, sharing your first piece, your favorite piece. Thank you guys for watching. First favorite. And now back to your regularly scheduled programs. Bye.